would begin the summary for this problem by asking students, how does this problem that you just did with Sam's stamp collection compare to what you did the day before with the rabbits, to know if they can recognize the difference between the two problems, but also what was the bump up? How is this a little more challenging than what you did the day before? At this point that I'm going to see answers about how they recognize the growth rate was still a decimal kind of growth rate as opposed to a whole number growth rate, so I'm expecting that. But I'm also wondering if there's going to be some sort of conversation about what do we do with the decimal, since it's a money sort of thing. What's going to happen with that, and how is that going to operate a little differently? Also, the conception that I'm wondering about is, will they notice, is it the growth factor that really affects how this population of money is growing or the value of this collection is growing? Or is it more what the starting value was? Because there's kind of this idea out there, if I start with more money and it grows at a certain rate, it just means that it's going to get even bigger and bigger than something that starts smaller. Well, what I'm going to ask them to look at is the vocabulary really closely, because they've used the term growth rate before and they've used growth factor before, but they really operate differently in the equation writing piece that typically is the thing that most students are going to be working to make sense of. Because before, when it was a whole number, we could say the growth factor was 2 and it was doubling every time. So it was really easy. But now that it's a percent, one of the things I'm going to look for is, are they going to translate when they see a growth factor of 1.1, are they going to say that's 1% as the growth rate instead of 10%. Just kind of, it's one of those things with percents where kids sometimes mix up that idea of what that decimal really means. Pose some questions. So what if the growth factor was that 1 1/10? What if that's what you saw? What would it mean? To try to draw that conversation out, or refer back to some of the previous ones in the problem to say which ones kind of stumped you the most and which ones were pretty easy for you to think about. Ask things like, when was using this focus question idea, when was it helpful in describing the situation? When would a growth rate or a growth factor be more productive for you to share your thinking about what was actually happening to, in this case, the value of the collection, or yesterday in the case of the population of rabbits? When would you want to use each one to communicate to your audience to help them make sense of the data? One of the things I might do before we even start is ask them to turn to a partner and share what they think first before we share with the whole class. Sometimes that allows for more whole group dialogue that's a little more comfortable than sharing in front of the whole class before I've had a chance to bounce it off up here.